Welcome to Encounter, where we celebrate putting faith into action and community leaders who live out compassion, grace, and love. We're a program of the Broome County Council of Churches that addresses food insecurity through Chow and the Greater Good Grocery, provides hospital and jail ministry, builds wheelchair ramps, and assists neighbors with transportation and shopping services through Faith in Action volunteers. We invite you to the conversation. Encounter your neighbors as we learn to walk together in love and kindness. Good morning. I am Jeff Kellam, the host this week. I'm the elderly and often adequate host of the Encounter program about once a month. Thank you for joining us this morning. I serve as the Parish Associate at the Union Presbyterian Church in Endicott. I can't do Rod Serling, but imagine, if you will, 75 people come into a room. And those people have various skills and abilities. They've been nurtured perhaps from their mentors, sometimes lovingly, sometimes not so much, sometimes suffering the mentors. But they come with various political viewpoints. They come from various places. And then under the proper leadership of, let's say, a maestro, suddenly the disruption that might have occurred with those 75 people in that room becomes harmonious. And then they invite some people into that room. And then someone says, wow. I love harmony. Philos is the Greek word for love. Then there's harmony, and then there's philos, harmony, and philharmonic. What a coincidence. Our guest today is the executive director of the Binghamton Philharmonic, and also the Director of Education and Community Involvement for the Philharmonic. So it's Paul Cienniwa and Julia Grella O'Connell. So welcome to you.
Good morning,
both.
and thank you for having us.
Well, you're so welcome. Thanks for coming out on this July morning. When I played rock on the radio, I played jazz on the radio, but I started playing classical music on the radio. And through all of this, I've gotten to a point where I just love all kinds of music. And when we bought our tickets to the Philharmonic, and this is, if you're watching now or listening and you're thinking classical music, the Philharmonic, if you like ABBA, they're going to play some of that. If you play video games, they've played some of that. Go to the movies, they've played some of that. And yeah, there's opera, and there's the classics through the ages. It's all played on that stage at the Forum. And growing audiences, I perceive, as one who sat in row N all this time, looking around thinking, wow, there's a lot of people here. So let's talk about how the program went last year. Am I correct that the audience is up a little bit?
Yes. Well, I started, by the way, that was the best introduction ever. Because that's exactly what we do.
Yes.
And we bring people, not just the orchestra, but the audience of all backgrounds, into this shared experience. It is the ultimate in civic engagement.
Yeah.
All backgrounds, all nationalities, everything. And we have the shared communion of music.
Yes.
Now, on to the music itself. And to answer your question about attendance this season. Well, I started at the Philharmonic in April of 2020.
Gosh, I remember.
So I've had an easy hill to climb because every year's been better than the other one.
That's right.
But we did exceed our expectations for audience this season.
Yeah.
We averaged over 900 people at every concert this season, which really exceeded our expectations. The season started with I think the most well-attended opening night in recent memory, and it started with Beethoven's Fifth.
Yeah.
We also had a semi-local cellist, Annie Jacobs Perkins, playing the Elgar Cello Concerto. And one of the treats about that particular program was we had our annual Ties and Tutus, which is a program that we do with the Binghamton City School District, where we bring in students to a pre-concert dinner at Doubletree. Then the maestro comes and talks to them. In this case, Annie Jacobs Perkins came with her cello, and these kids all get dressed up, and then they come to the concert.
Yeah.
So it was a particularly special opening night. But then we made our way through the season with our Pops concert that had a Halloween theme, all the way through our Winter Wonderland, where for our second year in a row we showed the animated film The Snowman with live orchestra.
Right.
We had singers from Tri-Cities Opera and a sing-along. Carrying us all the way to the end of our season with The Pines of Rome by Ottorino Respighi, which is a piece that if people don't know it, they need to know it. It's really remarkable and an outstanding performance. And then finishing the season with a Pops concert of music, as you said, music of superheroes, sci-fi, and fantasy.
Yeah.
So a lot of film and TV music in that film, in that concert. So as we build our seasons, we are, of course, at the core symphony orchestra, but and our core repertoire is from the classical body of music from the Western tradition, but we also perform Pops concerts, which bring in music from other traditions,
Sure.
with a focus on the symphony orchestra. I should mention as well that the 23-24 season also was the first in which we had our Phelps Mansion series, our Phelps
Mansion Museum.
Mansion and Museum, Mansion Museum series of chamber music. We had 4 chamber music concerts. It's a beautiful small ballroom at the Phelps Mansion Museum. And we sold out a couple of these and came really near selling out the other ones. So these are Sunday afternoon concerts with guest artists. We had a string quartet from the Juilliard School. We had a world-renowned singer from who was moving back from Europe to the U.S., and we kind of caught her in transition. Just a great series as well, and a much more intimate, up-close way to see and, of course, hear music.
Yeah, and the concerts, because they cover such a broad range of music, there is something for everyone, no matter what your musical preference is. You know, my mother played saxophone, my father played drums. I tried drums, have no sense of rhythm. I tried trombone, has no sense of self-discipline, so I never practiced the horn. But one of my gifts is I just appreciate and love all kinds of music. Some more than others, to be sure. But that's why we bought season tickets, because we don't want to miss anything. And there's such an exciting season coming up that I think we want to talk about that in a moment. I want to talk first about, I said 75 people. It ranges, what, from 65 to 80 or in the Philharmonic?
Orchestra, right. The size of the orchestra, will bring in additional musicians depending on the repertoire. Like the Respighi, Pines of Rome, that was, I think we had 81 musicians, because Respighi calls for an offstage trumpet, he calls for brass who are out in the hall.
And birds.
And pre-recorded birds. And so it depends on the repertoire. So when we're performing Mozart, we have a smaller orchestra. When we're performing Respighi or Mahler, it's a much larger orchestra.
And the musicians come from central New York, northern Pennsylvania, New York City, Rochester?
Yeah, our musicians, we sort of have 3 bodies of musicians. Our musicians go through a rigorous audition process and a probationary to tenured process that comes through the Musicians Union. So when we audition, we are calling people from around the country. We have people flying in for auditions.
Right.
So the current body of the orchestra is about 1/3 Southern Tier. We have a good number of longtime orchestra members who live in Binghamton and the surrounding area. And we have musicians in Ithaca and so on. And then the other part of the orchestra comes from New York City. Now, one of the great things about the Binghamton Philharmonic, and one thing that attracted me to apply for the position of executive director, is that I said, we're 3 hours from one of the hottest and most competitive performing arts markets in the world.
Yeah.
So I said, this has to be a pretty good orchestra. It's a really good orchestra. And what we kept hearing this season is that every concert is better than the previous one.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely true. So we have 1/3 from New York City, and then the other 1/3 really come from everywhere else. We have musicians, for a while we had someone flying in from Chicago. We have musicians in Pennsylvania, like the other side of Pennsylvania, Maryland, Boston, and so on. So, and they all come together during the week of a performance to rehearse, perform. And we have this very nice thing where a lot of our patrons host our musicians in their homes. And I'm one of the host homes as well. And so our community develops these ongoing relationships with our musicians.
Right.
As I say, this is a shared communion of a very grand scale.
Yeah. And speaking of communion and community, as the Director of Education and Community Involvement, Julia, what is your role with the Philharmonic in building relationships within our local community?
That's a great question. So my role is to cultivate audiences, and education is a really big part of that. I'm a longtime music educator myself, and what I do is I create programs, music educational programs for people of all ages, from preschool to adult learners, retired people. And what I love to do is put the music that we're performing on stage into a broader context. I feel like people have this impression that classical music is something intellectual or something highfalutin or something for other people and not for me. And my mission is to show that music history is history, and that music is the expression of cultures. And this is something that children as young as 2 or 3 are able to grasp and participate in. So I do a number of programs called Family Symphony Sessions, where supposing that the orchestra is going to be playing Mendelssohn that week, that concert. So the concerts are on Saturday evenings. Thursday evening, I will do a family symphony session at the Forum Theater where I gather children and their families. It's free for children and their families. And we'll talk about an aspect of the music that is being performed on stage. So for instance, this coming season, we are going to be doing Mendelssohn's Hebrides Overture. And there's just so much there to bring children in. You know, Mendelssohn himself was also an amateur artist, and he kept all these sketchbooks. He went to Scotland, and they're beautiful pen and ink drawings that he made. And this is something that children can really respond to. How does music picture a landscape? How does music make you feel? Can you feel the waves of the North Sea? And I always teach the children a sort of physically embodied musical practice. It could be a clapping game, it could be a folk dance, because we need to get the music into our bodies. What I really want children and their families to know is that music is for them, classical music included. It's for all of us, and we need to get it into our whole selves.
Yeah, music conjures up images. The Respighi, I remember, I've always loved Respighi because I may have told you, Paul, that I announced for our UE high school band concert back in the 60s when I was a student there. And Respighi was on the program, The Pines of Rome was on the program. So I kind of locked into that, and through my whole musical life, I've often put on Respighi's various things. People have referred to it as postcard music. And that was a derogatory term, but the postcard captures an image, and I think his images of Rome are well known and beautiful. And so as you listen to that music, I think even the conductor said, you know, listen and try to picture these things happening, the pines and the winds and the breeze. And children can identify with that beautifully because their imaginations are so alive.
Right. Exactly.
One other child story, and Paul's heard me tell this story before. The symphony has a program where you buy an adult ticket, you can bring a kid.
Oh, you don't have to buy an adult ticket.
Oh.
Children 17 and under may attend all of our Forum Theater concerts for free. And I say you don't have to buy an adult ticket because we have had teenagers call the box office and say, my brother and my younger sister want to come to a concert. And I'll say, how old are you? And they'll say, oh, I'm 16.
Yeah.
Great, I don't need to see your parents. And what a wonderful thing that children can be involved in the civic engagement and be a part of this audience.
You bet.
We see that. And now, of course, like the family symphony sessions, we see a lot of grandparents bringing in young children.
Yeah.
But this is a great opportunity to engage young parents because, going to live performance is expensive.
Right.
But they can bring 5 children. We see aunts and uncles making an outing for our holiday concert, Winter Wonderland. We see big family groups, and we don't turn them away.
Right. I have a friend who is married to a pastor, and they brought their whole youth group. So there were like 20 kids there under 18.
Well, we brought 2 kids from our church. One is 15, the other is 9 or 10. And they'd never been in the Forum Theater before. They'd never seen an orchestra that size on a stage before. They'd never heard that music before. And so within the first, 5, 6 measures of the Lohengrin, the smaller child turned to me and said, wow.
And that's the thing, Jeff, is that we all hear canned music in our cars. Binghamton, we're so blessed to have classical music, broadcast classical music, because a lot of communities have eliminated it, and you have to get, streaming radio or whatever. But that pales in comparison to the live sonic performance. It is more than 3D. It's really extraordinary. The vibration, the depth, their sonorities that aren't reproduced in speakers, but it's also experiencing that wow with everyone else who's experiencing that wow.
It's an immersive experience. It just envelops you. And it's absolutely true what Paul says. There's something about sharing that with other people, sharing that feeling of transcendence that great music gives with other people. It is, I don't know how else to put it. I mean, to say that it builds community is sort of boilerplate, because it does something more than that. It feeds the spirit, and we all need that. We all need that. So you do that in communion with other people right here in your community, and it builds these sort of intangible structures of belonging.
We talk a lot about this in the office, of the Binghamton Philharmonic being a force for good. What is our role in this community? No, it's not just fine arts. It's not an elitist art form.
Exactly.
And also in tandem with our education program, this is part of our profile here. We are bringing people together, especially in a time when people are so disassociated and in disagreement with each other. This shared experience is so important. And maybe it's better than having everyone come to a city council meeting, because nobody can talk. Just listen.
Well, and it was very impressive. I guess the last concert was close to Memorial Day, and we started, I noticed the flag was up on the stage and the spotlight was on it, and then it dawned on me we were going to sing the national anthem. The symphony would play the national anthem. And the place...
They sing.
Trust
me, people always say, did you have a soloist? I said, no, that is a hymn. It's our national hymn. A hymn is meant to be sung by everybody. And people stood up and they sang it. When is the last time that's happened? It doesn't happen at a baseball game. Because they have a soloist. So this is also remarkable. And that was a remarkable concert too, because it was our superheroes. So we invited first responders into the hall for free. To engage them as well, but to really show honor and respect for their important role in our society. If we're going to celebrate the music of superheroes, we might as well have some real ones in the house. We
need to move on to next season. My guests today are Paul Cienniwa, who's the Executive Director of the Binghamton Philharmonic, and Julia Grella O'Connell, who's the Director of Education and Community Development for the Philharmonic. Now, next season, I just happen to have the brochure here. So we have... Do I need to remind you, you're going to start with the rest?
That brochure articulates 2 of our series.
Yes.
We have our symphonic series, which is traditional classical, and then we have our pop series. But there's another flyer, which is our Phelps Mansion Museum series, which is the 4 chamber music concerts. But I know we're focusing on the big orchestra today.
Okay.
So we start our season with our symphonic series, a program, if anyone remembers the Beethoven Project, which is back from 2019, where we were going to make our way through all 9 symphonies over the course of 2 seasons.
Something interrupted it.
Pandemic did. But we are continuing to make our way through the Beethoven symphonies. So this last season, we started with Beethoven 5. We start our season with Beethoven 6. And next season, here's a spoiler for what I call next season. We're actually doing 7, 8, and 9 through that season, which is really lovely. So we start our season with Beethoven 6. We have our principal French horn player. He'll be playing, Alex Schuhan, will be playing Richard Strauss's First Horn Concerto. Great opening concert. And then we move to our Pops series. We always alternate.
Yep.
And our first Pops concert is Dancing Queen, the music of ABBA. For those who follow ABBA, you know this is the 50th anniversary of their appearance and prize for the Eurovision.
Yeah.
And we have a group coming in from Canada called Jeans and Classics. They are a rock band with singers, and they will perform with the orchestra the great music of ABBA.
Wonderful.
And the set list is on our website. It's everything everyone knows of ABBA. That show is actually proving to be very popular so far. We're selling quite a few tickets. We then move back to our symphonic series. This is also, I want to say, not that anyone cares, but Bruckner fans care. The 200th anniversary of Anton Bruckner, who was one of the great symphonists, and somewhat neglected because the symphonies tend to be very long. We are performing Bruckner's Sixth Symphony, which is one of his shorter symphonies, and that's the concert with the Mendelssohn Hebrides Overture. Mm-hmm. And talk about sonic music. This is sonic music. His music doesn't get performed a lot, but this is really a connoisseur's concert, but if you like big sounds and a big orchestra, that's a great concert. We then move on to Winter Wonderland, where this year we're putting in some music of Trans-Siberian Orchestra, Mannheim Steamroller, some of these contemporary classics that have captured the imagination of Christmas fans everywhere. And we're coming back to The Snowman because we love this film. Now it's part of people's holiday tradition.
Yes.
It's a 25-minute film with orchestra. There's no spoken word in the film, so it's a perfect fit. And beautiful animation. There's sing-along. We have Tri-Cities Opera, a quartet of their resident artists singing carols, and it's a great show. Again, free for kids 17 and under. We then move into the other part, or the new calendar year, and this program, if we have a little time, we want to front.
If you're going to sing something, no, we don't.
Not going to sing. So this program is our Pops at the Forum, which is now going into its third year. This harkens back to our one of our originating ensembles, which was the Broome County Pops. Mm-hmm. And it's a program of light classics. But that program is going to be built out of a program we're doing the day before as a program that is open to school children. And very briefly, Julia, tell us about that program.
Okay, so we are going to be doing a program in conjunction with Black History Month of music by African American composers. The program is called Classically Black, Great Music of African American Composers. So we're going to invite children, grades 4 through 8 from all over the area to come to the forum and participate in this program that is created just for them. It's going to have a live narrator, the orchestra on stage, and just an introduction to great American classical music by composers of African ancestry.
So as we were building that program, we were looking at these composers, and this influenced our choices to some extent, but a lot of the music we thought would be great on a Pops program. So that is some of the music that people will hear at our Pops at the Forum. And then we continue our season with you tell me. We have Rachmaninoff Third Piano Concerto.
The Little Symphonies.
Oh, Little Symphonies. That's right.
Yeah.
That precedes
These are all shorter works.
Shorter works. We have the Mozart Sinfonia Concertante, which is a concerto for violin and viola. We continue our season with a program with Rachmaninoff's Third Piano Concerto with the great Andy Russo on piano and Sibelius' Third Symphony. Rautavaara's In the Beginning.
How do you pronounce?
Rautavaara.
Okay.
He's another Finnish composer like Sibelius, but he's still alive.
Yeah.
Actually.
Beautiful primordial music. And then we end our season with a Pops concert. She's Got Soul. Think featuring the great Capathia Jenkins, who's sung on Broadway for many years, and now she's been touring the country she has an Aretha Franklin show she's done. We've brought her in for She's Got Soul because it's this incredible set list of all the R&B greatest hits.
Wow.
And it's Aretha with some backup, Capathia with some backup singers and the Binghamton Philharmonic.
Yeah.
It's going to be a great way to end our season.
It's an exciting thing because of all the different kinds of music, and once again, having children there helps build the audience for the future, and then broadening out the cultural history of our country, I think will help also make the audience more inclusive than in the past. All right, we have 3.5 minutes, and I need about a half of that to get out of this. The conductor, we ought to talk about the conductor, who is a teacher in himself. I mean, every concert, you learn something.
Well, the great, Daniel Heggie is a world-class conductor. I knew him when I was in my teens in Chicago. He was a conductor of the Chicago Youth Symphony and won quite a few awards for his programming. So I actually had bumped into him, and then here I was interviewing for this job, and he didn't know who I was, but I remembered him. I said, "Oh, I remember you." We have a world-class conductor. We're very lucky because Daniel lives just outside of Syracuse. He's also the principal conductor for the Wichita Symphony, and he conducts around the country in different guest capacities and so on. We're very pleased that Daniel has just signed a new 5-year contract with us, which started on July 1st.
Terrific.
And so we're really happy to have him continuing this journey with us. He's a great steward of the organization, great programmatically, great artistically, and he's a fabulous teacher. Mm-hmm. We have a number of maestro visits before our classical concerts. This coming season, those will be on the Wednesday before a concert. He'll be giving a talk at the Broome County Arts Council on State Street in Binghamton. He also talks at Good Shepherd Village and 5 Riverside. These are public opportunities to talk to and hear from Daniel. Right. He's also doing one of our Kilmer series lectures. This is a series of talks that Julia spearheads, but we've invited Daniel to talk about just reading a score. What does that mean? We're so lucky to have him.
So, Julia, the last word, you have about a minute. Tell us what to look forward to once again as the community comes together and becomes involved in the Philharmonic program.
I think that what everybody has to look forward to is a beautiful experience of sharing cultural expression together, and this is something that belongs to everybody. We, no matter where we're from, we are all the heirs of the great classics of Western culture. And again, this is for everybody. Last season when we opened with Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, I ran into a friend of mine who was in line. She had been helping a Syrian refugee family, and she was bringing them to the concert. She was so excited, and I spoke with the mom, the refugee mother. She was so excited to be able to bring her children, who had recently arrived here, to hear Beethoven, because she knew, Syrian refugee mom, as we know, that this music is for all of us.
Yeah. Paul Cienniwa, the Executive Director of the Binghamton Philharmonic, and Julia Grella O'Connell, the Director of Education and Community Involvement, have been our guests today on Encounter. Went fast, didn't it? We'll have to do this again.
I talk a lot.
Oh, well, I know, but Julia and I will talk about that later.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Encounter, produced by the Broome County Council of Churches through the cooperation of WBNG-TV. Thanks to the Town Square media stations for their carrying the audio portion of our program. I'm Jeff Kellam. We'll see you again next week. Be gentle with people and with yourself.